back on my 40 days, 40 nights to cover like at 8, 9, and eventually like 10, 11 later. But I want to cover like 9, 10 of my 40 days, 40 nights visibility challenge. Well, I'm, despite of like being late, the biggest ruminations that are just liberating that I'm just gonna enumerate about, besides scrolling, is about like how much, facts alone doesn't always get to the heart of things, even if they're true objectively or wise, of, due to the fact that there's the shared experience of shared reality, and then there's the subjective. And I'm just getting a little bit philosophical, a little bit, and we don't always know 100%, even if there is such a thing outside and within it. And there is, for the lack of a better word, order of priorities and hierarchy of what is. It doesn't guarantee like people just following it, like, and even on a cognitive level, like there's mostly layers and layers of just like the process of not only coming to terms with what's in front of your face and what are the actual trajectories that are being shown possible, and taking ownership of that possibility while simultaneously being present with it. But also like the fact that on top of that there is like desires that are both personal and collective, that you're all informed by, that are intersecting with the objective and subjective truths, and philosophers, thought leaders, homegrown intellectuals, and mystics are all like, debated about like whether reality is real, whatever. And I'm just making an observation, or the idea of there is the subjectivity due to many vantage points, like the reality of how internal, things are automatic, and so the ecosystem, and yet even in that, with the ongoing principles, that there's room for evolution, which is really about what adapts well the most for long-term progress, not so much of survival of the fittest and contrary to popular belief. So to kind of point that, it's like, what brought it up was more like, again, like, despite statistically that, by pan, people end up with people who are either the opposite gender, more for opportunity than preference, and more of circumstances, even if they are much more discerning about who gets to be in that world. There is still this insistence that it's either that happens because for more nefarious reasons, or that they're secretly got cut off earlier, but that either for nefarious reasons that maybe are what happened personally, but it's not true across board, and not differentiating that, or secretly, or for some reason assuming that they're bi and pan and sexually fluid attracted people, or I'm not saying this right, are of all gender and of all genders, are just more closer to homosexual than having a capacity for the other, therefore they're suspicious equally. And, even though this is more studied and it still needs to be taken away, so even if it is from a legitimate study and from both anecdotal and across the board different pure studies and all that, well, it's many queer folks are bi, and it's more just circumstances, opportunity, and than anything nefarious. And even if there is nefarious, it doesn't. It still leads to the thing of like really two different issues, like multiple issues that just gets and I can cite those later because I actually have, I can't put it in the back of my hand, of not just like Instagram, Shizmiss. There's still nefarious that most of them are eagerly, secretly gay and pretending that they're bi, that they can do both, or if they just the opposite, it's always for some secret internalized homophobia in all situations, even though that might be the case, even that be because they're too male-centered or they're too heteronormative, but it's not, well, most of the time it's not always like that. It may be particularly for groups. And now to clarify, like, there is like studies or like qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative is interviews, not just mere anecdotes, and then qualitative is statistical data, statistical research of study, along with intuition. Just populations are this population of cities or general group or the whole nation or particular sample size, that a decent enough population. And then there is the anecdotal and the subject of your own personal and subjective experiences with them, and those can, are both different aspects. So just to be very clear, yeah. But this kind of thing of pansexuality, bisexuality, the sexual fluidity, and the discrepancies in the tension between various like qualitative and quantitative research and interviews and things regarding of the subject of what led to end up with one type of partner to the other, and the nuances of that. And then there is your own personal observation and lived experience in your social context, which is very right for thinking about or facing like objective and subjective truth, and reality of like the messiness between facts, truth, lived experience, and intuition, and they don't always come to gel together as easily of a coherent thing to stand on. I mean, the whole thing regarding Avaya is an example of that, of the messiness of intersection of facts, truth, shared reality, and personal observation and experience, like the messiness of that, and that creates like the tension around, obviously not just philosophy, but also like what is my reality mean? What is going to move the needle in facing the truth, so to speak, and tell you just that example alone, as imperfectly as I explained, is that it's not just messier, but it's also like, and not just caught a dissonance and just like the tensions of these different aspects, but also the reality of multiple realities of just that people have will do like what their automatic response is and choose whatever they have a capacity to choose, both based on what their nervous system capacity and the kind of what they can see in their circumstances and their social locations, and what they can have capacity and willingness to. And that's kind of hard to swallow, because that's something we can do a lot of things within our control in a non-controlling way, like existential, inner work, things that will make us more capable of working with the tensions between truth, both shared truth and personal truth, facts from consensus reality, and then rather our own personal observations and lived experience, and the messiness of that. And you can't make someone like just hold that tension in a way where it recognizes what's underneath something while holding objective facts about things. Conclusion in this long arc is that it's one of those, like, you can't get the horse to drink the water if they're just not at a place to want to drink water. We can only create not only material conditions, but also create a way of observing ourselves in a way of being influenced and influencing ethically, that is, that actually gives us more both sovereignty and receptivity of how many of the facts, the lived experience, the different philosophies, observations land within us and let it land. We don't necessarily have to decide on the truth now, right away, the truth now, or neither that nor do we have to just suddenly find like the middle yet, or the third way yet, any more than the absolute truth, or let go of any truths. You don't have to make either of those decisions. You just have to like as we're building better conditions of not just critical thinking, but capacity to be ethically be influenced and ethically influenced without this is without personal disrespecting people's personal sovereignty. We just have to just figure that out